Hey guys, Loman02. Going to be doing some Canadian Highlander content on a fairly radical deck that, well, let's just say I wasn't planning on doing a video, but I had a lot of fun kind of exploring and building the deck that you have in front of you, which, if you have followed a lot of my channel content, you'll probably know that I enjoy playing non-traditional aggressive decks, specifically Suicide Black, SUI Black. Which this deck shares some similarities of. And as I talked through the build, like the genesis of the deck was that deck. But what I want to do is kind of embrace more of a aggro combo archetype, which is not something that you really see a ton of in the format. And I think does actually add some interesting strategic options to the baseline Suicide Black deck. Although at this point the decks are very distinct. And the fact that you'll see this deck's running 27 creatures, whereas Sui Black's running 48, because it needs that redundancy of that effect, just so you get very consistent opening hands, draws, etc. It also runs 24 lands, so I mean it's much more mana lean than this deck is. But your mana is more important in this deck, I would say, or at least your mana development, is a little more important because of the game plan the deck has going on. So what is aggro combo? Well, really it's a very bizarre hedge that you don't tend to see that often. Some folks would probably classify red deck wins. Some varieties of burn or red deck wins is almost an aggro combo style strategy, but I would say it lacks some of that distinction. Traditional Suicide Black, like in 64 formats, that ran Hatred, it had turn 2 kills, like turn 1 Carnophage, turn 2 Ritual, Hatred, you're dead. I'm at 1 life is an old aggro combo style shell as well. And I don't think Hatred's quite good enough in this format. I tend to run Dark Triumph. I want to run more of a traditional aggressive, finisher in that deck. But basically, you're taking the weaknesses of the Suicide Black archetype, which are many. They're manifold, right? The deck itself is very good at what it's designed to do. But its ability to beat other aggressive decks, be they white, red, it doesn't matter. Any other aggressive deck, it's going to tend to fold to because it's doing a lot of damage to itself. Its threats are efficient and do a lot of damage, but are not really good in combat against other creatures. Tend to be smaller. There are some evasive ones, but they're not going to tangle very well in a fight with white creatures or green creatures. White creatures because of first strike, and generally just higher quality. And then green creatures, they're big. They're just big creatures. And obviously in a deck like that where you're running 48 creatures, your removal count's relatively low. You generally don't want to have too much of it because the deck's very proactive about promoting that aggressive game plan. So when I first got into this build, which as you can see it's called Sui Storm, and I'll kind of talk through how the deck is intended to run and how it plays, and we'll go over some games too. I was very creature heavy. I was probably in the mid 30s to high 30s, and I had a reanimator sub theme. And I thought is, hey, wouldn't it be cool if I could just reanimate a Gristlebrand randomly, or a Grave Titan, or put a Hogak in my graveyard, just get a Hogak back. Just some big dumbs, if they have Krakus in play, Grave Titan looks pretty good. It does kill people very fast. And I also got to explore kind of while I was doing that, all right, I don't traditionally play Skullclamp in Sui Black because the mana is so tight at 24 lands. Oftentimes you want to have very explosive openers like Black Lotus 1 land, and then you don't really have time to, sit around and waste your threats that you develop on turn 1 and turn 2 by Skullclamping them. Card advantage is great, but your card quality is not going to increase over time in that deck. But in a deck like this, where you do have more powerful and viable options to play, your play pattern doesn't have to just be just pack rat magic. You don't have to keep on casting, your Carnophages out. If your plan, your attack plan, your aggro plan starts folding, you play on a Skull Clamp and you start drawing cards. It's also why there's more lands because, if you're running cards like Clamp or like Pack Rat, a lot of these other cards that aren't in traditional Sui list, they tend to be more mana hungry cards. So, what are all the avenues to winning with this deck? Well, I would say that this deck, it's hard to typify this deck. I mean, it's an aggro combo deck. I think it just definitively is. But it has a fairly typical aggressive game plan with less coherence than standard Sui builds because it's running less creatures, less little creatures. So its aggressive game plan is abated, but if you're in the right matchup where that is a good plan against your opponent, i.e. Blue Moon, great, just do it, because it's going to be very hard for them to deal with your creatures unless they have exiling effects, because a lot of them that are on the small end just recurse. They kill them with their bolts, their arc trails, and if they're not presenting a clock in a timely enough manner, you're just going to keep on getting them back and attacking them for 2 a turn. They're going to fall over and die. Or they'll tap out to do something silly, and then you'll just slam a Grave Titan or a Hogak or whatever, or a Gristlebrand maybe. But against aggressive decks, like for instance, like Red Deck wins, where you really don't have any right winning that matchup, as long as your opponent doesn't mulligan into Oblivion, and they also know how to mulligan their deck properly to win matchups, etc. Like, you shouldn't expect to win that matchup. I've tried a bunch of stuff in that build to get around it. Like, you generally just have to go mid-range if you want to beat that matchup. Put in Obliterators, put in, Kalitas's, put in, like, stuff like Tendrils of Agony. I'm sorry, not Tendrils of Corruption, to get them. Whereas this deck has a much more powerful kind of go-to, which is, you start seeing red cards, you play out your little idiots, you maybe do some chump blocking, some trading, some skull clamping, you just buy time, and then you reanimate a Gristlebrand, because Red Deck Wins does not tend to beat a reanimated Gristlebrand. Just not really a thing they tend to do. It's possible. I mean, like, if they get down like a Raminep Excavator, yeah, sure. I mean, or a Sulfuric Vortex, yeah, they can stop you from gaining life. But if you just sit on this thing, it's going to be very tough for them to beat, because it's just huge. It gains a ton of life, and if you need to, you can draw cards. But in that matchup, you're just going to put it in play and be like, what? Do the same thing with Grave Titan. Grave Titan's probably just good Night Nurse as well. To the Red Deck Win style deck, it's huge. It puts 10 power on the board across 3 bodies that can all block very effectively against that style of deck. So, I mean, both those kind of plans are in there. And then there's also like the grindy kind of mid-range matchups where they have pretty well diversified capabilities. They're going to tend to have a lot of 2-for-1 advantage. And what do those style of decks tend to struggle with? Well, because they lack coherence themselves, mid-range decks by nature lack some coherence. They tend to be not very good against just pure like combo, like Storm. And this deck has pretty strong outs just to storming someone out. It's actually one of the ways that I've tended to veer the deck as a build more towards, because I find it's just one of the best things to be doing. Like, reanimating's cool and all, but like, I really want to reanimate a Gristlebrand, draw 14 cards, and just Tendrils of Agony them out, win right on the spot. So it's kind of like a mix between Suicide Black, Reanimator, and Tin Fins. Is kind of, I guess maybe just Suicide Black and Tin Fins. What do you get by doing this? Well, Tin Fins is already a deck that I think a lot of folks would say like lacks some consistency in results. I don't think that's per se true. I think the deck's actually quite good. I think it's tough to play on MTGO because you don't have Sacrifice, which I can't pull up the card reviewer because it's not on MTGO. It's not available. But Sacrifice is 1 black, instant, I think originally printed as Interrupt, sacrifice a creature, and then put black mana equal to its converted mana cost into your mana pool. I don't think that's exactly how it's worded, but that's what it does. If I could play that card in this deck, I certainly would. If you were trying to build this deck in paper, yeah, you should probably run it. But one of the interesting things you get when you're not on like a pure Tin Fins build is you get the duality of having the possible aggro plan, so you can mulligan into an aggressive game plan against the right matchups, like decks that are going to counter all your spells. Like, generally, these little aggressive idiots tend to be really good that come back for next to no mana. And the other thing you get is you actually get to equity build in both strategies. So, Suicide Black is a Black Lotus deck. It's a Fair Lotus deck. And one of the things I was thinking about is, like, there's a lot of crossover between the points that are in my builds of Suicide Black and Storm. With the exception of, like, generally 2 to 3 points. Like, generally they tend to all be the same. But it's Black Lotus is 7, right? So, because you're a Lotus deck, like, the Storm plan's already pretty naturally complemented, I think. And you also kind of have an interesting edge in the fact that you have all these little creatures, right? And like little tiny creatures don't tend to be great traditionally with Storm, but it opens up some equity building and some interesting cards that like you don't tend to see all that often in the format. And I think are very powerful, but they require very specific things to be true, of which this deck's quite good at making them true. So like Songs of the Damned, this is a very powerful mana maker. It historically has had some decks, but it's kind of a tough build-around card. So Songs of the Damned, instant, I think originally printed as Interrupt, but I could be wrong on that. So black, instant, for 1 black, add 1 black mana for each creature card in your graveyard. So this is kind of like a one-time, I'm gonna blank on the card name. There's some weird land that you tap to and it makes black mana equal to the number of creatures in your graveyard. This is a one-time effect. This tends to be a little more powerful in my opinion because it's less invested mana to actually get it going, so you can do it on turns 1 and 2. It works really well off of rituals. etc. It's not a land. It doesn't require multiple land drops to actually get working. So this is a very powerful effect. And you won't be able to see this in traditional Storm because traditional Storm does play some creatures. It plays more than I think most folks who are laymen or have not really played a lot with Storm would expect it to have. I mean, you've got most of them are mana. Most of them are just mana producers and or like just pure mana. Like you have Blood Pet, which is also in this deck. You have the Wild Canter, Goblin Electromancer varieties, familiars sometimes. JVP I've seen, but I don't tend to like. But those style of cards, Baral. But basically, they're either filters or they make mana for you. But there's generally like 10 to 11, maybe 12 creatures inside Storm decks. But really not enough to get like enough equity off of Songs of the Damned. Like Songs of the Damned really wants you to have 5 to 10 in the bin. Like if you're playing this and it's a Ritual Plus or it's an additional copy of Cabal Ritual in your deck, that tends to be very powerful. And because we're playing all these kind of Dumbo creatures that cost very little mana, we're able to build equity in a card like this, which doesn't really see play in Highlander. Even though I think it does definitely have the power level, especially when it's there's equity built into it with inside your build, and you're storming, so you're using the mana for something productive that wins the game on the spot. So that's one of the interesting kind of like benefits that you get to doing this. Also, you get Culling the Weak. Culling the Weak, you do see in Tin Fins, but you don't tend to see as often in like just pure Storm builds. And it's a lot easier to kind of get this going. You can actually Culling the Weak used to kind of be like mid-combo mana. I think is mid-combo mana in like the Tin Fins builds. Like normally, like if you don't hit your sacrifice, your Burnt Offering with your Gristlebrand, like you hit this, and like you just need more mana to keep going on the chain, then you'll sack your brand or whatever you got to Culling the Weak and then keep going. But one of the interesting things that you kind of get strategically in a build like this is that you can actually use Culling the Weak as more so like startup mana, like sack your Gutter Bones or whatever, just to get the 4 mana you need to start the combo chain to get it going. So I think there's more equity built into Culling the Weak in a build like this than there is in like per se Tin Fins. Couple other interesting ones. There's some typical Storm ones. Like, you have Blood Pet in here, typical Storm card. Lake of the Dead. We are more landed decks, so I'm very comfortable playing Lake of the Dead in here, which is not horrible in an aggressive strategy, but is also quite good when you're trying to combo kill. But you don't tend to see this card as often outside of, like, big black decks. Like, I've seen black ramp decks that will run this. But it's not all that common. But the Mana Burst is definitely very nice. A couple other interesting ones you get. Diabolic Intent. This is also a card that you don't see in Storm decks very often. But you're able to have access to in this deck because you have a high enough density of creatures that are fairly replacement level and or can become moot at certain stages in the game. I.e. you're bloodgassed in the face like a Corsair Crewfix and you want to go for a Storm kill, Diabolic Intent. And Storm doesn't have access to this. I mean, they have like Wishclaw Talisman, Grim Tutor, Beseech the Queen, and like the big tutors, like the Commander tutors, Diabolic Revelation, and Behold Beyond. And I think in general, like those are stronger in that deck because that deck has much more consistent mana acceleration in the early stages of the game. But it also comes at a cost, right? Like you don't have an aggressive game plan like this deck right here does. Am I trying to say this deck's better than Storm? No. By no means. I think Storm's still probably one of the best decks in the format. But your flexibility and what you're able to do and what board states you're able to beat is a little more finite. And your matchup percentages are going to be a little different as well. I mean, they're going to be a little more insular, I think, on a build like that. Let's get Mausoleum Secrets. Mausoleum Secrets, again, this is another like instant speed 2-mana tutor. Now, this isn't tutor for anything. It only tutors for black cards, which, the most common things you find are a Yawgmoth's Will, mana, i.e. like Ritual, Cabal Ritual, Songs of the Damned, or Entomb. Entomb to set up like a Reanimator effect on, Gristlebrand and to storm them off on the next turn or on that very turn. So, yeah, you get these additional cards that I think make the archetype, honestly, a little more than viable. I think it's actually pretty good. I don't think it's the best deck you could be playing, but if you wanted to kind of bring something that attacks the format from several different angles, is going to benefit you having good knowledge of the matchups in the format, so you know how to mulligan the deck effectively given the matchup you're in, and then also solid knowledge of your meta game. You can do pretty well with a deck like this. Yeah, so those are some of the more interesting cards. I'm going to go through and kind of do a piece by piece talk through on all the card choices, maybe not ad nauseum. If you're not interested in going through a little more in depth with me, just go ahead and jump onto the comments. I'm going to have some gameplay on this deck as well. But I kind of want to cover it like right now, how I've got the deck piled out, and kind of what the game plan is and why I have some of the cards that I have in here. So if you're interested in gameplay, go ahead and pause, jump down to comments, and yeah, go get after that gameplay. All right, so more lands. I found out this deck is much more mana hungry than SUI Black. With less creatures and a less consistent aggressive game plan. I found that it was fine for me to draw more lands and have a more consistent mana base in the early to mid game. And couple that with the fact that I, in general, have more access to my cards through tutors and through card draw in this build. Plus, like, you kind of want to have your mana develop. You want to go fast as well, but, like, you want to have your mana develop in this deck. That said, I do think I could go down, like, maybe 2 more lands, maybe even 3, go down to 30 with the deck, make it a little more, like, Storm-esque. Storm's generally a 30-land deck, like, somewhere between 28 and 32, I think is probably correct for Storm. 30 is probably average. We are splashing into green, so one of the interesting things with the genesis of this build is that it started off as more of a Suicide Black deck. Ran more of a green splash. I thought at one point I was going to run Tarmogoyf in this and Abrupt Decay and like Assassin's Trophy. But I ended up chopping a lot of that. Also Traverse the Ulvenwald. That's actually a really interesting card for this style of build as well. But I kind of found that green was one of the more vestigial colors in the deck. I still am running a Grimflayer because it's so good at saucing up a graveyard, Lotleth Troll. But I think you could probably cut them. I would still leave the Bayou and the Overgrown Tomb and the green mana in here for Deathrite Shaman, because Deathrite Shaman is great acceleration. It's also decent disruption, and it can rando kill people and keep you alive for a bit if you need some draw steps, etc. We are touching green. We are running the fetch lands. There's actually of note no Wasteland in this deck. That is a card that I've omitted, at least for now. You could opt to put it in there over a basic swamp. I tended to find in this deck that, I wanted to interact with their interaction, basically stop them from stopping me, because the deck is decently quick. Like, I would say that, if you mulligan well, you're probably not going to have as consistent a turn 4 kill as Storm, but you're a turn 4 deck. Like, you're a turn 4 deck, just not always with Storm. Sometimes you just beat people to death with, little idiots. Sometimes you reanimate a Grave Titan and beat them to death by turn 4. And sometimes you storm them off by turn 4. But I would say it's a consistent turn 4 deck. I mean, that's Sands Disruption, that's in fishing, right? So, games that I'm going to showcase relatively soon are going to go longer than that because, we get disrupted. And, in a deck like this, you have less redundancy than, like, the Storm deck does. You have less redundancy in that game plan, and then you have less redundancy in your aggressive game plan. Although I like to think the recursive threats kind of complement that well. All right, so more lands. Like I said, you want a more stable mana base for this kind of game plan. We are still a Black Lotus deck. This complements the aggressive plan pretty well because you want to get down threats that, in general, are not going to scale well the longer the game goes, and you also want to have access to a lot of mana to be able to storm kill or cast multiple spells into a reanimation effect rapidly. So Lotus quite good in the deck. Chrome Mox, free spell, really good with Gristlebrand if you're doing kind of like a Tin Fins combo and you just need to get more mana down to keep going, keep drawing cards, and then eventually cast a lethal Tendrils of Agony. Lion's Eye Diamond, yeah, again, because we are storming and we are a Yawgmoth's Will deck, Lion's Eye Diamond's great. And another random thing that you can kind of get going with Lion's Eye Diamond is that a lot of these cards, they can just get discarded and basically quote-unquote cast from your graveyard. So, if you really need to, you can just pitch them, Lion's Eye Diamond also great as a discard effect. So, if you have, effects like Apprentice Necromancer or, Gura's mentioned doesn't quite work that way because you can't stack it. But you could stack some of these spells. You could stack Exhume and then discard your Gristlebrand out of hand by discarding your whole hand and get it back with Exhume. Same with, Corpse Dance, it's top card. Although on MTGO, be careful because Graveyard Order does matter in this deck, and MTGO doesn't really give a shit about your Graveyard Order when it comes to discarding your whole hand with, Lion's Eye Diamond. So you have these kind of effects. Necromancy, same thing. You can, stack it and then discard your whole hand because it doesn't target until it triggers after it's resolved. So yeah, you can do some cool tricks with LED to reanimate whatever, Grave Titan, Gristlebrand, you name it. Does kind of all of that. All right, Lotus Petal, Mox Diamond. Yep, of course, sure, why not? They're fast mana. There's a lot more lands, so Diamond becomes more viable. Diamond not a card that's traditionally played in Suicide Black. Urza's Bauble, like these cards could possibly come out. I think I have 2 Baubles in here. I may only have 1 now. I think I was running the Baubles just because I wanted more kind of stupid ways to get this card going. Not Lot of the Troll Grimflayer. You don't really need to do it. It's kind of interesting too, though. Like actually, I know why I originally included it was that. Plus, I was running a bunch of discard, like unilateral discard, like Mind Rake. What is it? Delirium Skeins, like a lot of cards like that. Chain of Fog, but like those cards were not necessary. I was just like these cards are not doing much for me. Like they're just they were kind of shitty. You'll even notice like Hymn to Turek's not in this list, which could possibly be an oversight. But like I found that I just wanted to be more proactive than all of that. And even though those cards do kind of help set up your bin to do reanimation shenanigans, like I found it wasn't an issue. Like it was not hard to get these cards in my bin, and or like having access to those style of cards like wasn't helping me out. Like it wasn't really like doing anything special for me that another card that I could be playing would do for me. So anyways, Bobble's still in here. It's still not horrible. Like you have like Liliana of the Veil. You still do have some discard effects. Sometimes you don't want to have the card in your hand on their turn. It is an Imp Seal deck, so you can take that for what it is. I mean, I don't know. Actually, it doesn't really matter because that would be in your hand, I guess, on their turn. But yeah, these are just easy cards to like put down. They're also nice, kind of with like cards like Infernal Tutor because they cycle, but not immediately, so you can like deplete your hand zone size, all that. But I did at one point have 2 Baubles. Now I guess I'm just down to the 1. All right, next up, you got Mana Vault. Yep, pointed card. Just a lot of mana. One of the cool things that I found with this deck is because it's running a lot of the Storm mana, you just hardcast monsters sometimes. Like I've hardcast Grave Titans like on turn 2, hardcast Gristlebrands on turn 3. You just make a lot of mana, and I'm not trying to say the primary reason for Mana Vault is to like hardcast monsters. Like it just sometimes can do that, which is nice. It's kind of like a nice little thing that like builds further equity in the card. It's just a great Storm card. It's a lot of mana for nothing, and generally when you're storming, you only need a burst of mana once. It's basically another ritual, is what it is. DRS, Disruption plus Acceleration. Really in here for the acceleration, but the added benefit, this just does everything. It does everything. If you can play it, you generally play it in any of your decks that can play it. Songs of the Damned, already talked this card's praises. I don't think it has a ton of range in the format, but it's so powerful that I was kind of always shocked that like there wasn't a home for it in the format. And I think this is the style of deck that wants it for sure. Like I think this is one of the better cards in the deck. Blood Pit, yep, just mana. Cabal Ritual, tons of friggin' mana. Burnt Offering. So this Sacrifice is not is not on Moto, but Burnt Offering is. They're basically the same card. You sack a thing and make either black or red mana of any combination where X is a sacrifice creature's converted mana cost. So this is actually an upgrade to Sacrifice. But in this deck, not really. I mean, it doesn't matter. Like they're the same card in this deck. But typically, how you're using this card is like you're gonna get your Gristlebrand down. Ideally with haste via your Goryo's Vengeance, your Apprentice Necromancer, your Shallow Grave, your Corpse Dance. You name it. There's a lot of ways to get a hasty Gristlebrand. You slam into them. You draw a bazillion cards. You probably have already used up your mana trying to get Gristlebrand down. Maybe you only have a land drop. Maybe you only have like something along the lines of Chrome Box or Lotus Petal. Maybe you get lucky and hit a Black Lotus. And then you pop your Lotus or pop whatever mana effect you got. Sack your Gristlebrand. Turn Gristlebrand into 8 mana, which you probably spent far less to get him into play. And then keep going for the combo kill. That's kind of the plan. So obviously, if we had access to Sacrifice, put it in the deck. It should be in the deck. I just can't play it on Moto. Culling the Weak, yep, kind of same story, just worse than Burnt Offering. But it does have, I don't want to say worse. It's not strictly worse. It's worse in the context of what I just explained, but it has a better median case for just ramping out a bunch of dumb stuff like early off of like a recursive threat you can get back, like Gutter Bones or Dread Wanderer or Bloodsoaked Champion. There's these kind of like recursive idiots. Dark Ritual, yep, mana. Priest of Gix, just mana neutral, and it's an additional thing that helps get Hogak down. It basically, it's mana neutral, so it's just kind of a card that you can play in a Storm-style deck like this, where it has benefits of being both an aggressive creature, whilst also being a Storm count for no mana committed, really. Rain of Filth, yep, great. Just mana. All right, Gemstone Caverns, hell yeah. So even though we are a more land-heavy deck, a lot of our mana is generally not going to be at card advantage. It's going to be at card disadvantage. Um, but both the aggressive game plan and the kind of combo game plan both want to just go quick. So I'm pretty happy running Gemstone Caverns. I've actually had it come down as a turn 0 play on the draw. A lot of these matchups, especially like in combo mirrors, against aggressive decks, you name it, are really going to come down to coin tosses. And I think having access to Gemstone Caverns to kind of be like, I didn't lose the flip this time is pretty good. And the lowest case for it is it's just a colorless land, which is not great, but you can Rain of Filth it away and it still kind of acts like a swamp then. Lake of the Dead, because we're a more landed deck, yeah, we're making Boku mana, casting big fatties, ripping through the library and storming people off, or just casting a bunch of nonsense that just beats them down. All these threats right here, these are all recursive threats. Up until recently, I was running Carnophasion here, which I did cut from the deck to put in Inquisition of Kozilek, because for some reason I was missing that card in my build. I don't know why, but I was. These cards are great because, they're kind of the baseline threats that, like, Suicide Black I don't think ever wants to cut. You'll run a ton more in Suicide Black. Like, you'll run, all kinds of stuff. You'll start running Pulse Tracker style cards in your deck. And, they're not very good. But these are kind of the ones that are good. Like, these are just good cards. They're all recursive 2/1s or 3/1s. And they're just all high quality cards that kind of work with the strategy because you're going to be dumping a lot of cards with cards like Bizarre Baghdad, Rotting Regisaur, Lily Out of the Veil, Smuggler's Copter, Lotleth Troll, Grimflayer, and like being able to get this random incremental value on efficiently costed bodies that can win the game on their own. It's just a really strong. It's a fine plan. Like it's I would say at this point this deck has become more of a combo deck over an aggro deck, but having access to just like being able to beat someone down when they're trying to hold up double blue, like, is great. Like, what are they going to do? Are they going to counter your Bloodcast? No, they're just going to get beat to death by it, and eventually they got to tap down for their Jace so they can find removal, and then you just kill them. You storm them off when they're tapped down, or whatever. But I think you kind of get it. Like, these cards are just kind of like the staple cards that I think give SUI some of its distinction from other aggro decks. It gives it that recursive capability and some non-traditional card advantage. We play all of those in this build, and I think they work quite well in the game plan. Codex Shredders. This is what I'm kind of trying out. Like, this card's really slow, but it's quite powerful. Again, we make a ton of mana, and, like, sometimes we're just rando milling stuff, or, like, discarding stuff that we just want to get back later. And, I don't want to play a card as narrow or bad as, like, Noxious Revival. But given the fact that we are a deck that produces tons of mana, we're a Yawgmoth's Will deck, just being able to mill yourself is pretty good. The lowest case for it's going to be, like, you mill, like, these idiots, like, and you just bring them back eventually. So it's not a hugely high upside. I guess it's a fine upside. Like, if you have to ditch, if your Tendrils or something, or your Yawgmoth's Will gets discarded early, you get this thing down, you pop all your rituals, you get back your Yawgmoth's Will with Codex Shredder, Yawgmoth's Will, recast all the rituals and kill them. It's kind of the idea behind it. But this isn't a card I would traditionally run in like this style of combo deck. Like, it doesn't get run traditionally in Storm. But I thought there was enough equity in playing the card because I have kind of this aggressive ground game plan with these recursive things. I have a lot of mana production that benefits from creature cards in the bin, the graveyard. That I was happy to run it, and I don't know if I'm sold on it yet, but like I do think the card is one, very powerful, and I think probably good enough in the deck. I think it's got enough benefit based around how the build's shaping up. All right, Citrus Supplier. Yeah, this was just a fucking busted card. It's really good. Obviously, this with Hogak was just absurd when they were a thing together. Lord knows why, but it was a thing that we all lived through together. So yeah, I'm playing it here in Canlander. This card is great. Mill 6 is so good. I've even considered trying to run like Ransack the Lab, but Ransack the Lab is just like too medium. Like I really want to like still embrace the aggro combo style strategy in this deck. I don't want to go like full Storm, because I know Mono Black Storm is a thing. Like you can go Mono Black Storm, and it's a fine deck, but it's just distinct from what I think I'm trying to do here. But Citrus Supplier fits very well in this plan. I mean, like, just the fact that it's a body and can block and buy you time or activate a Smuggler's Copter is just great. I've also just reanimated this thing. Putrid Imp, pretty much only sees play in like strict Reanimator, like the most combo-oriented builds of the deck. But I think it's great in this deck as well. Possibility of having a 2/2 in a deck that puts a lot of cards in the bin is great. It's just it's a very efficiently costed card if you are in the lane of wanting to pitch cards out of your hand to do something else, which this deck very much so is. All right, Pack Rat. Yeah, I actually don't run this card in Suicide Black because I think it's too mana intensive for that deck. But once you jump up to this many lands and you have a game plan where you're trying to reanimate Gristlebrand's and Hogaks and Grave Titans and all kinds of nonsense, Pack Rat becomes quite good. It's also just a good threat. Like, it just kills people. If they don't deal with it, if it gets to activate once, I generally think it's looking to win a game. Collective Brutality, yeah, just, again, like, this card, is pretty much played in every black deck. I don't know a lot of black decks that just don't run Collective Brutality, but it has more equity built into it, and the fact that I actually don't mind discarding cards in this deck. Like, sometimes I actively want to discard cards because they're just not good in my hand, or they're better in my graveyard. Una's Prowler, yeah, this kind of gives, like, a little bit of an edge to an opponent, but, like, again, kind of like Putrid Imp, like, Reanimator style decks generally want this card, but, it kind of does both, right? It can beat down. They can discard to shrink it, but they're discarding to shrink it at that point. And it also complements the combo game plan of, like, reanimating a fatty and then drawing a bazillion cards and storming. So, pretty good. Pale Rider of Trostad. Lower on the power level here, but 2 mana for a 3/3 is not bad. It's harder to block. There's a lot of things that block this, though. But you get to discard when it enters the battlefield, which is kind of interesting because, again, like, you may just want to get rid of some stuff, or you need to power out an Infernal Tutor early and you have excess lands trapped in your hand, all that. Grimflayer, yep, just sauces up a bin, can become a 4/4 very fast in this deck. But yeah, mostly just it sauces up a bin is what it's here for. You spill cards into your graveyard and kill them with them. Lotleth Troll, again, just another hand to graveyard discard outlet. Also just a powerful creature. Like, this is just a tough creature. Like, it's 2/1, small, got it. But it's got Trample, discard a creature card, put a +1/+1 counter on it, and it regenerates, which, you don't see a ton of regenerators, and regeneration is pretty good. So yeah, Lotleth Troll, quite good. Smuggler's Copter, this card's just fucked. This card should have never been printed, frankly. But it's funny to me because, like, I think if you're playing aggro, it's generally a mistake not to run Smuggler's Copter in your deck. But this card just goes up so much in value in a shell like this, where, like, you're not only an aggressive deck, but, like, you benefit directly from putting cards into your graveyard. And that's not even card disadvantage, so, like, the card's just absurd. Like, you should play this in pretty much all of your aggressive decks, and its power level goes even further up in a build like this. Liliana of the Veil, yeah, just a powerful planeswalker. Can help control the board. Like we said, we don't really care about discarding cards, and/or we have creature cards that come back from the bin, so discarding them is not really a huge cost. Just a problematic card. Like, it's a very powerful and problematic card for a ton of decks. Rotting Regisaur, just huge. Just a big old thing. A 7/6 for 3 is just so absurd. And getting to discard is pretty great, too. So, yeah. Bazaar Baghdad, yep. So it says 33 lands. We're really, I would say probably a 32 land deck. Bazaar Baghdad's just a spell. But yeah, this card's quite good in this deck. It's probably not, like, at its full power level. Like, I would say it's probably more powerful in, like, just a full out, like, Reanimator build with, like, more Reanimator spells and more fatties. But it's very good. It kills folks dead very fast. So yeah, Bazaar, quite good. All right, Yawgmoth's Will and Tendrils of Agony, just the Storm components. I've cast Farewell in this deck, and it's been good. Like, this deck is actually a deck that can cast a Farewell and still do pretty well with the results of a Farewell. But yeah, so I mean, I kind of put these in their own pile. I don't really know how to typify these two cards, other than, like, these are operative for Storm kills. And actually, Yawgmoth's Will is not always operative. One of the things I find with this deck that's really kind of interesting, as I'm thinking about it now, because I didn't really think about it deliberately before, is that this deck, when it does go for a Storm kill, like, tends to, like, have a lot more Storm than Tutor Storm does. Like, Tutor Storm tends to, like, generally, like, win with, like, maybe 3 to 4 extra copies of Tendrils over the life total, which I would say is the hallmark of a more efficient deck. This deck just, like, Storm count 20, like, because you're just recasting, like, Gutter Bones and shit like that. That doesn't really matter. Out of your bin, so it's a lot easier just to cast things. which is weird, but like this deck has an easier time getting to higher storm count. I also think it's probably less consistent in doing it on turn 4, so like I'm probably comparing apples to oranges in that regard. Like if you have a lethal tendrils or a lethal tendrils kill in Storm and you can do it by turn 4, you tend to do it by turn 4 if you don't think you're going to get disrupted. But generally speaking, if you waited until turn 5, like the storm count would just almost double because like your access to that much more mana or land drop is a big deal. So maybe I'm comparing apples to oranges on it, but this deck just has felt like it has an easier time getting a higher storm count than like literal Tutor Storm does in the format. All right, next pile here, you each have all the reanimation effects. So, like, reanimate, yep, cool. Goryo's Vengeance, Apprentice Necromancer. So, like, the instant speed ones are interesting, too. Like, you have some interesting counterplay with, like, counter magic with, like, Goryo's Vengeance, Apprentice Necromancer, Shallow Grave, and Corpse Dance, because they're all instant speed reanimation effects. So you can, like, EOT them, and then, like, on your main, try to do 1 or 2 more, or, like, you know, EOT 1, hand attack into reanimation effect on your turn. You name it. But, you know, ostensibly, like, these are the most powerful reanimation effects in the deck because typically, like, the best target's Gristlebrand. Like, hands down, unless they have a Caracas in play, like, if you can get a Gristlebrand, you probably should get a Gristlebrand. Grave Titan is also great, but it's no Gristlebrand. It's just kind of a redundancy. It's like a non-legendary creature that is easy to ritual out and is very hard to beat. But it's Gristlebrand, if you have 2 draw 7s off of it, is almost impossible to beat. It's just not going to generally happen. Can, but it's not going to very likely. So that's why you're using these effects. So like you can, you know, dump your Gristlebrand EOT with an Entomb, reanimate them on your own turn. You know, this is for like the strict level 1 play, like just how this deck wins fastest. Entomb, Shallow Grave, attack, go to 27, you know, or 30, whatever life, draw the cards, and then play out your fast mana and can storm them out. So I mean, like that said, like this deck does have like this deck has turn 1 kills. Like this deck technically has turn 1 kills in it. That involves like drawing the same cards that like Storm would turn 1 kill with, like Black Lotus, Lion's Eye Diamond, and Infernal Tutor. But you know, it also has some turn 2 kills that involve like the Entomb and the reanimation component to it as well. You still have the rest of them. Like the rest of these reanimation effects are just fine. Like one of the cool things I found is like sometimes I reanimate other people's stuff too. Like reanimate's just a good card. So is Animate Dead. Exhume a little more icky, but it's still fine. Stitch Together. Stitch Together is not a card you commonly see, but like because like I was saying, like this deck has a very easy time getting the threshold. Like I was like, yeah, Stitch Together's fine. Like I dump enough cards that I think it's 100% correct to play it in the deck. Necromancy, again, because of the triggered ability, it's a triggered ability. Like you can do some interesting stuff with like Bizarre Baghdad, spilling stuff you know off the top, off like an Imperial Seal, or LED kind of shenanigans where like you discard your hand with this thing already resolved, and then like your Gristlebrand comes in and oops, I won. Kind of cool. Yeah, Life Death, just a secondary copy of Reanimate itself, albeit for 2 mana. Next up, you have the tutors. So Imperial Seal. I didn't really cover points in this, but like I'm covering all the points. Like this is a Black Lotus Imperial Seal, Mana Vault, and what is the last one? Yawgmoth's Will deck. Yawgmoth's Will just recently got a point. And really, the Imperial Seal was the last card I added, and it's fine. Like it's not great, but again, it's a 1-pointed tutor that you know gives you access in a deck that can do very powerful things with basically 2-card combos, i.e. Gristlebrand, any reanimation effect. So I think it's fine. I think it's worth it. I mean, I don't know what else you'd want to run, like maybe Mind Twist, but like that does not feel as topical as, well, pun intended, as Imperial Seal. Intent, yeah, we kind of talked a lot of these ones, like Mausoleum Secrets and Intent. These benefit a pilot the more creatures they run, and we're running a ton of them. Infernal Tutor, yes, standard Storm card. Not very hard to ditch your hand in this deck either. Entomb, one of the best cards in Reanimator typically. Probably one of the best unpointed cards right now. I have to really think on that, think if it's the best. It probably is. LED is also very good, but it's a lot more specific than Entomb is. Ancient Tombs. Yeah, in regards to like unpointed cards, like the Ancient Tomb effects, Entomb, and like LED are probably some of the most powerful unpointed cards. Gamble's up there too. Gamble's very powerful too. Yeah, I don't know which is, but like Entomb's up there. Like this card, I could see at some point in the future becoming a pointed card. It's just so good. Buried Alive, yep. One of the things you consider doing with Buried Alive, like I think Buried Alive is probably at its best in Necrotic Ooze combos. But it's also fine in this deck. I don't think it's worth going into a Necrotic Ooze combo for this deck because it pretty specifically be glued together on the back of Buried Alive and Buried Alive alone, i.e. you have to like find Buried Alive and then like cast Buried Alive, hopefully not drawing any of these bullshit cards that you need to do the Necrotic Ooze combo. And, like 2 turns after you decided you want to go for this line, then reanimate your Necrotic Ooze and win the game. If you're not familiar with Necrotic Ooze, I'm not going to pull the cards up, but I'll explain the combo relatively fast. You have Phyrexian Devourer, Walking Ballista, and Necrotic Ooze. Necrotic Ooze gets all of the activated abilities of creature cards inside of your graveyard, which you could say, hey, that sounds kind of interesting with Gristlebrand as a card in your deck. Yeah, that's fair. But I also have to run Walking Ballista, which is a really fair card. It's fine, but like it doesn't really do anything outside of the. I mean, it does things outside of the combo, and it's good quality. But like, I think I can do better. I need to run Phyrexian Devourer, which is dog shit. Phyrexian Devourer is a 6 mana star. Maybe it's star plus 1, star plus 1. Anyways, how Phyrexian Devourer works is you exile cards. Basically, you can pump it up. You exile a card from the top of your deck. And Phyrexian Devourer gets plus X, where X is the converted mana cost of the card you exiled off the top of your deck. If Phyrexian Devourer hits 6 plus power, you have to exile it. You have to get rid of it at that point. So what the combo is, you get this: you Buried Alive, the Devourer, the Walking Ballista, and the Necrotic Ooze. You reanimate the Necrotic Ooze because Necrotic Ooze only has activated abilities of cards. You can activate it for as many cards as you have in your deck as a copy of the Phyrexian Devourer, which puts X +1/+1 counters on it for the converted mana cost of each card you exile. And because Necrotic Ooze also, again, has all the activated abilities of all the creatures, and you have Walking Ballista in your graveyard, you can use those +1/+1 counters to kill them at instant speed by plinking them with the Necrotic Ooze. That combo is quite good at like evading removal. Like they can put a Swords of Plowshares on the stack, but once it's on the board, like you're just going to exile all the cards, then shoot them in response to whatever removal they put on the stack. So take like some split-second shenanigans or something like that to actually beat it. But very tough. Very, very tough to beat. But that said, like I don't think it's worth running. It's 3 additional cards you need to run in the deck. They don't all per se synergize with what else is going on in the deck. I think that's a different combo for a different deck. But you could run it in here if you wanted to because we are running Buried Alive. Typical Buried Alive schemes are going to look like 2 recursive threats and like a big thing. Like, Gristlebrand, sometimes it's a Hogak. Hogak's feasible with it because you can get back, like put like a Bloodghast and like a Gravecrawler or something in the bin. Play your land, get the Bloodghast back. If you have a zombie in play, replay the Gravecrawler, play on Hogak and hit them. But typically it's just going to be Gristlebrand. Gristlebrand tends to be the right thing to reanimate. Like I think it's like Gristlebrand is probably the best thing to reanimate maybe in the game. You can make an argument for Emrakul with instant speed reanimation effects, but I think Gristlebrand probably wins more games if it gets to draw cards than Emrakul probably does, but it's close. Like one or the other. All right, big dumbs. Hogak, yeah, just huge. Just a huge idiot. It's actually really cheap to cast, too. It's really easy to cast. So it kind of is nice with Storm because you can like play out like 2 1-drops, then like play this thing for free. Storm count 3, which is a thing I found. Like you use Hogak for Storm count in the deck because he is randomly for some odd reason free. Or you spend like basically 2 mana to get Hogak on the board, and that 2 mana is spent on other cards that actually are spell counts. So yeah, it's just a funny card. And it's just huge. Like this thing's just a big old lunk. Grave Titan. I just wanted one non-legendary card that like I think is very high quality, is very efficient at very effective at ending games. Probably decently efficiently rated too. I mean, 6 mana is not a lot for this card. Turboing out these big dum-dums is not hard in this deck either because we're running all this like fast kind of mana, like Songs of the Damned, Blood Pets, Cabal Rituals, Dark Ritual effects. Like having a turn 2 Titan's not out of the realm of possible by any means at all, and that tends to be pretty good. All right, so card draw. Gristlebrand's the big one. Like you can probably put him over in the dum-dum pile. Like, Gristlebrand's just like a combo piece, but he is card draw too. But you have Glintleaf Siphoner. Fine, it's kind of like a slow Phyrexian Arena, but it actually also attacks and builds some of the equity in the Creatures Matter graveyard cards, etc. Dark Confidant. It was funny. I posted this list or a list close to this on the Facebook, and someone was like, "Oh, Dark Confidant and Gristlebrand in the same deck." I'm like, yeah, bud. Like, why would you not run Dark Confidant in this deck? Are there going to be times that you draw the Gristlebrand off the top with your Bob? I mean, yeah, it can happen, and like you'll probably lose those games and probably die. But I think the other 98% of the time, let's call it 97% of the time, because Hogak, Grave Titan, and Gristlebrand are all pretty bad to draw with Bob. Outside of that, most of the cards are pretty acceptable level to draw. But you have to look at the deck strategy too. Like, we're reanimating Gristlebrands. Like, we're planning on taking a beating in this deck. Like, we're going to use our life total aggressively as a resource. And Dark Confidant kind of, this card has pedigree being played in decks that have won tournaments that played Blightsteel, Colossus, Tinker, right? Like, it's just worth it. Like, it's worth it. Like, yes, you'll lose some games to bad luck, to variance, but you'll win a whole lot more when you have a Dark Confidant that comes down on the board and is uncontested in the early to mid game. Silent Visitor. I'm not running the other version of this card. I can never remember the name of it. It's a zombie, which does make it intrinsically somewhat better because of the creature type. But this one has Madness, and it's also a 3-1. The other one's a 2-1. This is another card draw card. Because it's really easy to deplete your hand in this deck, like this can very easily just draw you cards. It also has Madness, so if you're like Bizarre Baghdading or discarding EOT, whatever, you're just discarding because you do that a lot in this deck. You can just play this thing. It's kind of free. Rune Raider, yep, again, like another Bob. Yeah, we could draw the Grave Titan or the Gristlebrand and lose 6 to 8 life, but generally speaking, it doesn't matter. Or you're going to have, like, put these big old chunks of crap into your graveyard and just got them out of your deck by that point, too. Clamp, yeah, like I said, like the creatures, because we're not so all in, so insular on winning with beatdown in this deck, like we can win with beatdown, but we're not really as focused on it as Suicide Black. The same will be true of like our low-end creatures in this deck as it is of Suicide Black. Like, they're going to get outclassed very quickly, and as they get outclassed in Suicide Black, you just need to keep chump attacking. You just need to keep on hitting them. They're like burn spells with Suspend 1 or Suspend 2. Suspend 1. They're burn spells with Suspend 1. In this deck, you don't have to do that. Like, you can do that if you really wanted to, but generally speaking, your deck's not going to have the right density of threats to continually do that until you win the game, even though it will work for SUI. In this deck, like, once your onboard threats get relegated to being shit tier, then you play out your Clamp, or you have your Clamp on board, and you start just turning them into new cards. And you start looking for one of the alternate game plans the deck has to win, i.e. get a big Dum-Dum in the board, or storm them out. So Clamp's quite good in this deck, but I would not tend to run it in Suicide Black unless you're going to build a more mid-rangey version. Our last pile is Disruption, and a lot of this Disruption has dual purpose. Fatal Push, this card is really good. I think it's pretty much always worth playing if you're in black. It's just so good. All right, Duress, yep, just hand zone attack. This deck can have issues on certain draws against blue decks, but again, we have the aggro plan, so like you don't always need it. But Duress is kind of nice to be able to clear the way for your combo, etc. Thoughtseize, almost dual purpose. Like, I've Thoughtseize myself on this deck just to get a big reanimation target in the bin, or set something up like that. Inquisition, again, just good disruption. Don't really target yourself with this very often. Cabal Therapy and Cabal Therapist, both kind of similar to like Thoughtseize. Like, you can use these to discard cards out of your own hand. Cabal Therapy also has a lot of equity built into it in this deck over like the Storm list that'll run it, because I have a ton of creatures. So like sacrificing some of these recursive idiots to get double use out of Cabal Therapy is quite nice. Cabal Therapist, kind of similar story. It also has Menace. I don't know why this card has Menace. It's actually come up more than I'd like to admit that this card has Menace. Like, there's one game that you're going to see if you watch this whole video where I believe I got a Gristlebrand into play. I drew cards, but I whiffed, and I was getting beaten down by White Weenie. And I couldn't draw again because I would die to the counterattack on the backswing. Or maybe I couldn't draw. Maybe I just had to play it and like leave it as a blocker. I can't remember if I had to leave it as a blocker. If I got to draw once, I just didn't hit. So anyways, I have this Gristlebrand in play. The turn gets passed to them. They slam a Palace Jailer. Yeah, that's what it was. I couldn't draw and stay alive if they killed the Gristlebrand. So I didn't want to just die. I didn't want to draw and like miss. So I didn't draw. I didn't want to draw and miss, and like I didn't have really enough goods in my hand to like be safe about hitting off of my draw 7 with Gristlebrand. So I was like, all right, I'm just going to play this thing, and it's going to block all these White Weenie creatures, and I'll attack next turn, gain 7 more life, and then just like try to win. Was the plan. And opponent plays a Palace Jailer, and I'm like, oh shit, like I'm probably going to die. And I had like in play like a Cabal Therapist and like some other idiot, like some other card that could block. It was like, I don't know, like a Dread Wanderer or something like that. So I block so I don't die. And I have a Corpse Dance in hand. So opponent attacks with everything except for the Palace Jailer. I use Corpse Stance on Cabal Therapist, which I had blocked just so I could stay alive. Because it had Menace, it attacked through the Palace Jailer, which is it was their lone blocker. Hit them for 1, get my Gristlebrand back, and then proceeded to win the game. So yeah, I don't know why I'm going on this full tirade, but it's hilarious to me, like how abusable Menace is, and like honestly I didn't assess Menace as being relevant on this card, but like it kind of is actually. It's kind of interesting that I've seen it be kind of relevant on this card. You could probably make it more so in a deck that's like playing more pump effects, etc. But like anyway, yeah. That's the deck, guys. The deck has quite a bit going on. It's pretty ham. It's actually, I think, pretty good, too. I think it's actually a pretty good deck. Had a lot of fun building it. A few folks asked me about it. Come to find out, I think Jeremy White mentioned it on a recent North 100. Actually, I know he did because I watched it after kind of like getting the idea, having the conversation with some other folks on the Discord to build this deck. I finished watching. I watched North 100, and I was like, oh, this is why people were asking me about this deck. I had like 2 people ask me like, hey, do you think this is viable? I'm like, yeah, it probably is. They're like, oh, what does it look like? I'm like, well, I don't know. I've never built it. And then I was like, why don't I build it? Like, I haven't built this. Why not build it? So yeah, this is what I've got. I do think there's probably more efficiencies to be gained, but I'm going to go to a pause, guys. I'm going to grab myself something to drink, and then I will be back, and we'll do some gameplay with SUI Storm, Sharknado, whatever the hell you want to call this deck. I don't know what to call it. It's probably, there's someone who's good at naming decks. Give this deck a name because it's fairly unique. I think it deserves its own name. All right, we'll be back momentarily, guys. Some gameplay later. All right, guys, we're back with our first game here against Jackie the Puppet. Yeah, this hand's pretty bad, but I think this is the early phases of testing. You're going to see some cards that are not in the final build, not the final build, but the build that I'm currently at right now. As I go through this, so I play tested against Jackie. Like, we played, I think, a total of 5 games. I just got utterly just battered into the earth in the first, 4. Because the deck was pretty bad initially. It was like really a bad Suicide Black deck that had this like minor sub-theme of reanimation that just never strung together for the deck. And the deck's starting to come out of its that shell here, but it's still kind of in that shell. So you kind of see the genesis of the deck over time. Like I don't think I would keep this hand in like a tournament setting. I wouldn't play this deck as it currently stood at this time in a tournament setting. But I was also testing, so I'm like, I'm going to keep it just to see what happens. But not a good hand by any means. Opponent plays out an Underground Sea. I play on a Bobble. Take a look at a card in their hand. I forget what they had. Doesn't really matter. I'm just cycling a card. They have Spell Pierce. I know they have Pierce. Which is not an irrelevant card against my deck. That can matter. Get the draw here. I think my thinking was, too, with this hand. Like, I didn't know what they were on, but like if they're on a blue deck, this hand's not the worst. You have time with it. That was a pretty good draw. Now what I'm kind of hoping for in this game is that, like, Jackie just kills my stuff. I'd rather that actually be a hard counter than Remand here. Because if I have one thing in the bin, I can use Mausoleum Secrets to find Entomb and put Grave Titan in the bin and Shallow Grave it to attack for 6 and put 8 power on the board left behind. Which is pretty good. So Jackie's not making land drops, but they're countering spells every turn. I tend to be pretty happy with this exchange. Right now you're going to see kind of like, this is how SUI should tend to play against blue decks. Like, SUI plays better against blue decks than this build of it does. But like, I'm just casting little dum-dums and just hitting them, and like, they have to do something about it. Like, and, you know, with regular SUI, they'd probably be dead by now. Like, they'd probably just been hit by like 20 Carnophages or whatever. Because their mana couldn't keep up. Like, their counter spells cost more than the threats in that deck. So here they get a little more time. This is interesting. I have like Goryo's Vengeance as well. The one awkward thing about this hand is, one, I don't have enough mana. I can't get Mausoleum Secrets on like going because I don't have anything in the bin. I don't have any 0-drop black creatures. I don't even know if any exist. And also, my best reanimation target that I would use Entomb on is actually in hand right now. So my opponent finally kills something. I'm like, great, thank goodness. So I can cast my Instant Speed Tutor. I believe I find Cabal Therapist to ditch my own Gristlebrand, which may have been a pretty greedy play, but like I don't know that against like Grixis Control, hitting them for 6 plus leaving 8 power behind is going to be enough. They can just Toxic Deluge the board. They block the Titan and then Toxic Deluge the board. What I really want to do is like set up this Gristlebrand and just win the game with it. If they tap out for some nonsense this turn, I'm probably going to be able to do it. They're treasure cruising here. Doesn't seem great for me, but I mean, if they're just leaving up counter magic too, like I can just try to find a threat and then resolve this Hogak. So opponent draws something with not draws, but impulses for something. It's a dig through time, which is a good card. Not as great post treasure cruise. I'm definitely going to go for it here. I just go ahead and sack this thing, targeting myself. Discard the Gristlebrand. If they have a Force of Will or Force of Negation, I'm going to get had. But like, I think that's going to happen anyways. Actually, I'm sorry, I have 2, so it doesn't matter. So like, I try to get it. They have Force of Negation. I find it anyways. Or I have the other copy of basically the other copy of Goryo's Vengeance there, and or Shallow Grave, the original Goryo's Vengeance. Gristlebrand does what Gristlebrand does. I just start drawing a bunch of cards. You get to see a Song of the Damned there. I cast down a Hogak, have a bazillion power in play. I didn't get to Stormkill here, but like I don't have to. I don't want to go to 3. But yeah, they're pretty damn dead. They bounced the Hogak. The Brand, I think I sacked to something. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. I managed to resolve a Brand and draw 14 cards, which is going to generally win you games, even if you're doing it the fair way. I pitch all these cards in the bin because none of them are good, and then just keep on playing dum-dums out. I make a play here or there. I could have swore that Necromancy, for some reason, because I haven't played the card in a while, actually gave your dum-dum haste if you cast it instant speed, so I flashed it in at the beginning of combat, which made utterly no sense. But, I made a play here or there. Haven't played with the card in a while. I just reanimate or recurse back the Spoiler Souls here to attack for lethal. They definitely don't have burn. And if they did have burn to kill off the Despoiler Souls, then I could cast the Bloodghast and get them with that. Yeah. So anyway, it's just a weird game. I do think I misplayed with the Necromancy there, but basically this is before the deck had really like a Storm win con in it. Because I think if I had built more for using Storm to win here, I probably would have been in better stead than I was in this game. I would have just probably won the turn that I drew 14. It's still kind of more in the Sui Black kind of domain right now. But as you can see, like the Sui Black plan with like the Spoilers of Souls and like Scrap Heap Scroungers, etc., Grave Crawlers, like is still pretty damn good because I mean it's just these little incremental threats that like are hard to deal with forever outside of like just exiling them from the bin or Swords to Plowsharing them or Path of exiling them. Tend to be really good against like stuff like Grixis. So even in its earlier builds, it's like the deck felt like it had potential to be pretty good. But again, I'm not quite on the Storm Shell yet. That kind of comes up in the later game. So anyways, guys, I'm going to go to a quick pause. We'll jump to the next game against Jackie here. All right, guys, we are back. This hand's one that you'd keep. It's got enough going on in it that that was a good draw, too. I mean, I just get this Liliana down versus Grixis. Feels good. I'm going to bin the creature I can't cast right now because I may actually just exhume that dum-dum. They put a Bob in the bin, though, which I don't really want to exhume with a Bob in the bin. I mean, it could work out to my benefit, but it generally will not. Draw a Pale Rider. All right, well, another card that you could consider running in this list, and I have considered, but it's just really high variance, is Dread Return. The creature count has kind of gone down as the deck has progressed in build, so I'm not sure if I'm that confident in playing it. But you could also build Dredge creatures into the deck as well, like Dredge Storm, Reanimator, Tin Fins combo. Draw pretty well here. Draw a Lotus. If they counter my spell, they counter my spells. I'm just trying to just smash their hand apart right now. And I'm doing a pretty good job, but realistically what I'm looking for is to reanimate. I'm looking for mana and a reanimation effect here. I could have saved the Lotus there to have that mana in case I drew it, but I kind of figured they're on counter magic at this point. As it turns out, they're not. They just have a Tainted Pact, and they're looking pretty specifically for an answer to my Liliana, which I assume is Abrupt Decay or Assassin's Trophy. I'm kind of hoping it's a trophy, because if it's a trophy, that means I get my next mana, and any draw of Reanimation effect for Gristlebrand probably wins me the game at 20 life. So OP goes for a while here. I believe they go down to something like 33 cards or 34 cards in deck, if I recall this game correctly. I believe it was 33 cards left in deck when they're done. Maybe 34, though. But yeah, they're going. They just can't find it. Oh, no, it was only 38. All right, or 37. So the Assassin's Trophy, that's the one they found. I'm happy to find land here because I get a Bloodghast back, means I can attack. I believe I do play the land down here. No, I keep it. I kind of want to build. I guess I'm trying to build up to the Bazaar of Baghdad so I can can actually use it for card selection to find a reanimation effect. I don't here, but I find a Glint Sleeve Siphoner, and like they're kind of on the ropes at one card. Unfortunately, one card they drew is a counterspell, so it's like, all right, well, that sucks. That would have probably gotten something regardless, though, from this board position. I just mill at the beginning of my draw step. That could go badly, but in general, it's going to be good for me. I don't want to... So the reason I don't do it post-draw step is I'm not going to keep any of the cards anyways. Well, there's a Yawgmoth's Will, which, if I can resolve that, will probably win me the game. They're sitting on 2 cards, though, and they haven't been playing lands, and I know they're on a deck that requires mana, so if they had drawn lands, they would have played lands there, I think, most assuredly. I draw to a land here. I think what I'm going to do, knowing my own playstyle, I'm probably just going to slam the Rune Raider and see if it sticks, as opposed to going for the Will. The Will is not, like, really great here. Actually, the Will is good here. The Will is probably a game win here. They play a Thrun out. Now it's time to go for it. So I will get the Lotus out. But keep in mind, I also don't have Storm right now. Like, I don't have the Storm win count. If I had Storm, like, I'd probably just win here. But I don't have it. I could have Exhumed too, but I don't really want to give them a card back. Or I guess I do Exhume. I do Exhume, and they have Leovold, so I can't draw with Gristlebrand. They have Jace is their next draw step, which is miserable. That's like, oof. Hell of a draw step for them. So, despite, like, a very powerful sequence of plays, like, opponents still, like, very in this. I mean, they have drawn pretty well. That Jace was a savage top deck. But, like, I don't begrudge them that. Like, I'm doing pretty busted stuff, and if I lose doing this busted stuff, maybe the deck's just not good enough. All right, Lily dies. Jace is going to be down this turn as well. I do attack them with both. I could try to resolve the Hogak, but resolving the Hogak would not do very well versus Jace. I'd rather just get Jace off the board right then. This turn I am going to get Hogak down. Opponent, again, has a really good top deck, a castable spell that gains them life. They're going to flip their Huntmaster. I make an interesting play here. I'm kind of hoping to draw lands, just any mana here, because I want to kind of cast these spells I have in hand. And I can't really blame anyone but myself, because I have I've destroyed all my lands with Rain of Filth to have that one to generate Yawgmoth's Will turn. I don't attack with Hogak here, though, because they have pretty good blocks on it. They can either they can basically trade off the Wolf and the Ravager of the Fells, and or their land plus one of the two. With the 2 damage stacked on it. What I want to do here is force them into a triple block on the Hogak to get rid of it. Because I've resolved Hogak twice, my graveyard's just non-existent now. So it's not very likely I'm going to recast it unless I hit more lands. Again, force triple block, put them down to 1. They still have a Wolf token left. They ponder. Again, like I was talking about Menace on Cabal Therapist, like they play on a True Name Nemesis, they're still dead. Because Cabal Therapist has Menace, so they can block it with both their things and then take 2 off the Bloodghast. Or they can block the Bloodghast on one of them and then take 1 off the Cabal Therapist, and either way I'm going to win the game. So yeah, Menace. It's really weird that comes up as often as it has for me in the playtesting I've done with the deck. Anyways, so this is the kind of the game where like I had a turning point in like my build philosophy. I was like, if I'm doing everything that I did in this game and like just not winning on the spot, like what the hell am I doing? Now, that said, my opponent had some very good top decks. Like they top decked into Counterspell immediately to stop my card draw engine. They top decked into Jace after I had gotten a Gristlebrand down, which was able to bounce Hogak multiple times, destroying my entire graveyard. And that was all like in a sequence of doing a Yawgmoth's Will turn, which had to have been something like a 6 to 7 for 1 advantage. And I'm like, if I'm not winning with that kind of draw, like I'm doing something wrong. Is my kind of my opinion on it. Like if I'm playing a pointed card that like is getting me a 7 for 1, like and putting like these like what you would generally think of as unbeatable monsters into play, like I got to be doing something wrong. So at this point, like I kind of started, having the thoughts of like taking this deck into more of a Tin Fins direction and getting like a Tendrils of Agony in there, because like it felt like if I'm going to be Yawgmoth's Willing, like I want to be winning. I don't want to just have a fair will in my deck. So yeah, this is kind of like the last game in the initial play testing that I did with the shell, and it was changing in between. But this is the last like true like kind of like I would say more aggressive variety of the deck. As I went forward with the build, I definitely went more combo-oriented. Or I built more equity into the combos in the deck, and, obviously I put Storm in it as well. All right, guys, quick pause. Be back momentarily with more gameplay with... I call this deck SUI Storm. I think an app name, I think of it now, would probably be Shitstorm, because it plays like some like low-quality black aggressive threats in it, But yeah, you name it whatever you want. But yeah, this is game number 1 that we're going to be showcasing here, and then we'll jump into the kind of the rebuilds that actually include the Storm package in it as well. All right, guys, we're back playing against BMCG here. First hand did not have enough mana. This deck really wants its mana. So at this point, I'm still playing Delirium skins in the deck, but I am over to a Storm conversion. Like, I kind of cut all of these like discard cards from the deck too as the build kind of progressed. I just found they weren't necessary. They were just too low power level. They were horrendous top decks. In this game, I'm going to look to set up a Delirium skins because I've already kind of dumped my hand, and it's going to be a pretty low cost to me. OP has a Ghoul Color's Bell, which I'm happy to see. Like, they're probably on some sort of like Lantern control or possibly like an Academy variety deck. Probably Academy. I forced them to discard the rest of their hand, which includes Lotus Petal and Transmute Artifact, which Transmute Artifact is still a pointed card. It's kind of spooky. This deck's going to have a tougher time stopping Time Vault outside of just winning the game. We Echo of Aeons here, which I'm happy about. Go ahead and dig here for Entomb. Entomb, reanimate Gristlebrand, and start going just ham. Unfortunately, I don't have enough life at this point to go for a Storm kill. I could have tried to with Imperial Seal if I had more life. If I had like two draw 7s plus 2 additional life, so 16 life to play with. I could have tried to go for a Storm kill here. But this is good enough. My OP looks at their 7 and packs it in. They can't kill us here. And we have very, very lethal on the next turn unless they can lock us out from attacking. Like, put in Ensnaring Bridge would be a card that could do it. I don't think this deck can beat it. I guess you just beat Bridge with the Tendrils. Which next turn we can probably Tendrils. Our graveyard kind of got demolished by the Echo of Aeons. So maybe not. But, yeah, anyways, we just go for the go big plan against them, just big dum-dums, and beat them to death here. And go on to game number 2. Quick pause, guys. We'll be back momentarily for game number 2 versus BMCG. Alrighty, guys, we're back. Cartophage is still in the deck at this point. You didn't see it in the deck text. I cut it because I realized I was not playing Inquisition of Kozilek. You see an F6 error here on my part. My opponent does something that I think, honestly, never seen in the format, and tells that they're authorized to play here, but they actually opt to give me the play, which I think is an interesting line. I didn't expect it, so I was already F6'd at the time, but they said, yeah, you can play. So, yeah, I missed my first turn, which sucks. But this hand's great. Like, it's got a Bizarre Baghdad. It's got an instant speed reanimation effect. It basically just needs to find a way to get Gristlebrand in the bin, which Diabolic Intent does. I go ahead and just sack off this Cartophage, which is probably its best use in this deck as it currently stands. They play out Paradox Engine, but evidently do not have a way to untap their artifacts. If they did, they'd probably win this turn. Paradox Engine is one of those cards. With Brand in the yard, I go ahead and reanimate Brand, attack, still have a land drop available, draw a bazillion cards, play a bunch of stuff and things, make just whole boatloads of mana, and Storm kill them here for 18. Now, the Storm count is not exceedingly high. It's just 9. The Storm count could have been damn near infinite here if we wanted it. Not infinite, but it could have been probably 3 to 4 times that if we had gone for a Yawgmoth's Will line off of the Imperial Seal. I.e., yeah, if we'd gone for the Yawgmoth's Will kill, I mean, the Storm would have just been through the roof, astronomically huge. But yeah, just go for the Storm kill here. Turn 5 kill, not horrific. Not exceedingly fast either. But, not the worst. The deck's still kind of in improvement phase at this point. It's still running cards like Cartophage, which I think you're going to see in all the gameplay, because I just recently cut it because I realized I wasn't playing Inquisition. But yeah, so we just get him here with Tendrils, and on to the next game and match, guys. Alright, guys, we are back. Playing this BMCG again. This hand's fine. Again, these were the games that I was kind of man, I should not be playing Delirium Schemes. The card is just not great. It's just not right for the deck. I go ahead and discard the Gravecrawler here. I get Spell Pierce. It's fine. The Gravecrawler wasn't really doing much for me, and I figure I'll be able to get it back later anyways. Find a Deathrite Shaman, which is cool. Play the Deathrite Shaman out. Get another land out. I'm looking to kind of burn through my hand and then Delirium skins them. But they have a removal spell, which is, again, it's fine. They're obviously on some sort of Jeskai list, which could possibly be a harder matchup, depending on what half of the deck they draw and what half of the deck I draw. I skins them down to 1 card. They go ahaid and get them Aven Mindsetzer in play, but honestly, even Mindsetter's not like the worst. Like I do have a significant number of tutors, but like I don't need to be on the tutor plan. And I know that they're hellbent, so they're off the top of their deck at this point. I just go ahead and stitch together. They unfortunately drew into a counterspell, which sucks, but it wasn't going to get anything back that was that great. It was going to get back like I think a glint sleeve siphoner. You'll notice I'm using Bizarre Baghdad when I'm hellbent because I want to build up my graveyard for Yawgmoth's Will at this point. I'm not going to do it once I have one card in hand, though, because I don't want to just waste cards. But if I'm hellbent already, because I've already done something else, like I'm very happy to just get rid of my just get mill cards, basically. Get a lot with Troll down, so I'm doing okay here. Like I don't feel like I'm dead, per se. I mean, their clock's going to outrace my clock, but I'm seeing a lot of cards with Bizarre. Pack Rat's an interesting one. I just go ahead and get the Gravecrawler down. I kind of want to see if I can do something better than Pack Rat. They're on Jeskai, so they're going to have a lot of removal, and like Pack Rat, if it just dies this turn, is probably not going to do all that much. And I kind of want to also like just leave equity in like the Lotless Troll here. So what I have to do is just instead discard both these cards, hit them for 6. Right now, like actually I am winning this race at this point. Songs of the Damned, that's a tough one to miss out on, but again, if we get Yawgmoth's Will at any point, we could probably just win. Legion Warboss is a clock changer, so they obviously drew into the Legion Warboss. You don't tend to see Legion Warboss in most Jeskai lists because the cards, it's a very quick clock, but it's not very high value. I have to lead back the Lotless Troll here. I don't have a draw off of Bizarre Baghdad because I'd just be milling. I'd be discarding my whole hand. I do get a free block here, so evidently they didn't draw into burn. See a draw step of Cabal Ritual, find just a bunch of mana, and go ahead and pack it in and go into game number 2. So the draws just didn't work out there. I mean, our opponent kind of had like the timely answers, in Mana Leak, and then this threat right here, Legion Warboss, which is not one that I expected out of their deck, but it definitely is a good card at closing, especially if both players are hellbent. The way I approach the matchup, though, is, once, the starting sequence had been done and, we had Delirium skeezed away their entire hand with the exception of this Mind Sensor, evidently, is use my card selection to find a combo kill. And I think I had pretty good outs to do it, but it just didn't pan out here. Like, if we hit Will, I think at any point in time, though, we just win. We have, easily win. Because, we got Tendrils already in the bin, so we don't have to tutor for it. We've got Songs of the Damned for mana. We've got Lion's Eye Diamond for mana. We've got a land drop. Yeah, probably winning as long as if we had hit like Will or wait to get Will. That said, Mind Sensor is problematic on the board, but if we find Will, we can even use the where are you at? The Collective Brutality just to kill it off up the Storm Count. But anyways, get got in this first one here versus Jeskai mid-range. Quick pause, guys. We'll be back momentarily for the next game versus BMCG on Jeskai mid-range. Alrighty, guys, back. Sounds great. Especially against Jeskai. Like, I really like Skull Clamp against decks like Jeskai because it's just going to put them in such an awkward spot. Like, I can get back this Crawler a bunch of times if I find another Zombo. It's just so much card advantage. Grave Titan's also not bad. I could have opted to save the Gravecrawler to Diabolic Intent, but right now I kind of just want to look for land drops. So no red mana, which is kind of nice. Red mana would worry me from the standpoint that it gives my opponent access to Braid, which can stop this clamp. I go ahead and Delirium skins us both. It doesn't look like I'm going to be hard casting this Grave Titan anytime soon, but I have access to this Diabolic Intent. So if I draw another creature, which in this case happens to be a Zombo, I can play it out. They Brainstorm here, probably looking for red mana to deal with the board. I could have Skull Clamped this, but the highest upside play is to just get this Gravecrawler down. Hope that they don't have removal for both, which they do. They have Arc Trail or Fire Ice. If they didn't, then I'm going to get back a Grave Titan next turn. But basically right now I'm just waiting to draw some sort of reanimation effect or creature so I can tutor to find a reanimation effect. So I start getting beat down by this Bone Crusher Giant. I screw up here. Actually, I don't screw up. That card was never going to be good because unless I had Entomb, it was not going to be good. I just want to do that for a free draw. So I reanimate the Gravecrawler to get a free draw. I attempt to Fatal Push their Bone Crusher Giant. They opt to Force a Will there, which I think is very aggressive. I think my deck does enough dangerous stuff that maybe you want to keep that, but they evidently want to try to beat down my Mausoleum Secrets, which I found off the top, into Animate Dead, get back the Grave Titan, and now they're in a tough spot. I've got an onboard card engine and an onboard threat that will end the game very fast. They have Council's Judgment, which is kind of fine. It's just you killed my big threat, but I still have 4 power left behind, and I can clamp I can clamp like crazy here. So I clamp this thing, draw some more. I'm looking for a land drop is what I'm looking for. I'm going to keep clamping until I find a land drop. Ideally, find a land, resolve this thing again, and then put down just some nonsense. Just play cards out of my hand. I probably should have attacked. No, I should have attacked there. That would just be... So, it's possible I wanted to attack there. At this point, I have to attack because I'm going to get out-pressured. I go ahead and try to Diabolic Intent for Yawgmoth's Will here, but they have a counterspell, which stinks. But I am able to kind of like use my lands as a resource here off of Rainafil to just draw a ton of cards. I'll go ahead and Tomb here, Gristlebrand, reanimate Gristlebrand with Necromancy, and just start playing more Dumbos out. I am going to attack with my 3-1 this time. If they want to block it, they can. If they don't, then that's fine too. They draw for the turn. Their one card is evidently not a Path or a Plow, so they go ahead and pack it in because they're probably not going to beat Gristlebrand. Yeah, and on to the next game versus BMCG on Jeskai Midrange. Alright guys, we're back. This is definitely a keep. If I draw a land, then I have... I basically, if I draw a land, I have a turn 2 Gristlebrand, which is, as they say, pretty good. Bobble's fine. Get a look at their hand. I'm kind of leery of counter... After killing them with a Storm Kill... was it Storm Kill? No, after killing them with a Reanimation, I'm pretty leery of them... I'm pretty leery of them being leery about my combo and leaving up counter magic, possibly for longer than they should. But like they tap out here for Is It Charm, I just go for it. Like Jeskai's not going to have a lot of good ways to attack the bin, so I just want to get this Gristlebrand in there, so I can kind of set up for it. Like I think if you can counter the Entomb effects in this deck, it's probably better than having to counter like multiple reanimation effects. Entomb's just a lot less replaceable than like Animate Dead is in my deck, so I take that opportunity when they Is It Charm to probably find their land drops, so they can keep up mana, and ideally for them, like, play a threat and leave up mana for a counter magic. Thoughtseize is good. I go for a Thoughtseize here. I believe they Ancestral Recall in response, and I see 2 counter spells. They have Condescend plus Counterflux, and they have Counterflux up right now. I play this card out, telling them, like, hey, go ahead and Condescend it, because I want to get the counter spell out of their hand. They don't. But it's like one of those spots too, right? Like where if they do, they're not going to be dig through timing. And if they, I don't know. I don't know what the right play for them there was. Like, Glintleaf Siphoner is also just no slouch. It's going to draw me cards. They have to deal with it at some point. But you'll see they kind of play a very passive game here, which tells me a lot about their holdings. They don't play out the Monastery Mentor, which means to me they did not find a 2-mana counterspell that I think has merit in playing out the Monastery Mentor. But at some point, Jeskai Midrange does have to win, too. It's very hard for the Jeskai Midrange variants of the deck to be able to just sit back and not play threats out. So I'm just drawing extra cards off of this Glintleaf Siphoner. I'm probably going to go ahead and Mausoleum Secrets here. EOT, it's an instant, which is absurd. Find Cabal Therapy. I do know that they have Condescend in hand, so I just go ahead and cast this for Condescend. They have a Mana Leak and a Spell Pierce as well. I just go ahead and get the Mana Leak out of their hand. Cast Animate Dead. They can't do anything about it. Get the Gristlebrand back. Draw a bazillion cards. Use the Bizarre Baghdad as a mana source to cast Burnt Offering and make 8 black mana off of Gristlebrand while still playing around Spell Pierce. And you can see my hand. My hand's absurd. My opponent slow played this, kind of giving me a decent bit of knowledge about what they had going on, so I slow played it as well. I didn't really have to play this hand quick. I reanimate the Gristlebrand to actually net mana off of recasting Burnt Offering off of a Yawgmoth's Will. They're really dead. I guess they just conceded this because they figure they're dead. Actually, are they literally dead? I have Mausoleum Secrets. I have 1, 2. I have 2 critters in Graveyard. I can't per se kill them on board, but I have the Tendrils in hand anyway, so it doesn't matter. Like I'm gonna get them here. So anyways, guys, that was this match against BMCG. Quick pause. Be back momentarily with more gameplay. All right, guys, we're back playing against Akvar here. Hand looks fine. I mean, it's lacking a way to get a Gristlebrand in the bin, but it's got a Deathrite Shaman, which is a fine, like kind of mid-rangey threat, and it's got Bizarre Baghdad to kind of filter my draw out as well. I'm going to go ahead and just activate this now because, like, if I get lucky and find, like, a Gristlebrand, I could just try to win right now. I don't. I do get the Mana Vault down, though, because I figure this is probably going to be a game where, like, I'm going to require a lot of mana resources. I also kind of hope that I hit creatures at some point because... Actually, I'm sorry. I do need to hit creatures because I need to get Mausoleum Secrets online. So I'm actually a black mana shy, I believe. Yeah, of Mausoleum Secrets. Using Mausoleum Secrets to find Entomb to then exhume off of that. So I go for the Mausoleum Secrets here, find Entomb, so I can put the brand away. Tap this land, play this land out, the Lake of the Dead out. Go ahead and Entomb here for Gristlebrand. Exhume the Gristlebrand, draw a bunch of cards, make a bunch of mana, hymn them, draw a discard off of Bazaar. Go ahead and stitch together the Rotting Regisaur. I just cast everything. I don't want to go down below 11 because they appear to be on, like, you know, a deck that has some tempo elements to it, and if they bounce my stuff and attack me, they can kill me. They dig through time here, which is risky business, but they don't find, like, the Swords of Plowshares of the Path to Exile, and the 16 power on board, you know, with a draw engine kind of forces them to concede there, so we end up getting them with the Reanimator win here. Possibly Storm win on the next... Actually, no, we're just going to attack for lethal, right? No, we don't attack for lethal, so I mean, I definitely try to go for the Storm win on the next turn. I'm going to see enough cards that's probably viable, but just depends on what I hit. And yeah, I go to 18, so I'd have 2 draw. I had basically draw 14, 15 off my draw step. Probably have access to a win off of Storm on the next turn, but don't know that for a fact. Anyways, guys, quick pause. We'll be back momentarily for the next game against Akvar. All right, guys, we're back. So this hand's acceptable, but not exciting. It needs to draw lands, but this is a 33 land deck, so I think it's worth it. But it's got enough going on in it that I think it's worth it. My opponent, unfortunately, kept a fairly greedy hand and is not getting paid off. I actually have, like, some of my few removal spells that I have in the deck in my hand. I just put down 5 power. It's nothing special, but it's fine. I get this Stitcher's Apprentice, or Stitcher's Supplier, which is quite good here. It's going to allow me to set up my bin. Rider of Trostad, not the most exciting. I go into attack. The most logical block is going to be on... I think the Priest of Gix, but evidently they're low enough on resources that they don't want to take the damage. They think the tempo line is going to make more sense. We basically just SUI them out here. We SUI black them out with slightly suboptimal threats. But at any point in time, kind of have a draw out to, like, finding, like, a thing that we can Goryo's Vengeance, which I guess there's only 2 of them in the deck. One of which is hard castable, i.e. Hogak. I guess you can never really consider Hogak hard cast, right? Because he doesn't get hard cast. But basically playing the card the way it is designed, you know. But yeah, if we hit Gristlebrand, we probably just win, and then, you know, we have access to a ton of mana, and yeah, just pressing advantage here. So, anyways, that was this game against Akvar. I'm going to jump into another one, I think against them, and then I'll have one more after that, and then we'll probably wrap the video up, guys. Alrighty, guys, we're back. This hand's great. I mean, I'm going to keep this hand because Rotting Regisaur on turn 2 is just huge. I mean, I think if you're going to play a deck like this, like, you don't put these ones back. Like, you know, if they have Swords of Plowshares of Path to Exile, yep, you get got. Now, Liliana comes along, and I'm like, well, I should probably keep her. Which I do. I probably should have put her in play. I mean, they still have 4 cards. I don't know. This isn't bad either. Get rid of the Woodland Cemetery. Draw this card, which is going to get discarded to Liliana right away. They go ahead and find a Tundra. Path to Exile my thing. Not running any basic forest. Get a Liliana down, force him to discard cards. I discard my card that I'm probably never going to cast. They fire up the Mutavault. So they're kind of put in a spot where, like, they both need to pressure the Liliana and also play threats. I just leave back Stitcher's Supplier because I think getting cards in my bin is going to be more valuable than attacking them for one. I find Hogak. It's an interesting card. It's a good card. So I'm just killing off their threats in their hand while they're kind of boxed into having to pressure this Liliana with the Mutavault. I think, like, realistically what needs to happen for them is, like, they really do need to... I probably should have reanimated the Hogak there. Oh, I know why I didn't. They have a Core Hobbit in play. That's why I didn't do that. Which kind of makes sense. The Core Hobbit's just going to blank that card. I find Mausoleum Secrets like a sack anyways, find Yawgmoth's Will, and proceed to just recast my entire bin. I probably could have done something more degenerate with that, but like they're kind of stuck right now. Like I've got this Liliana that's going to kill any threat they play. I've got a blocker for the Mutavault. Yeah. I could have also reanimated the Hogak, I guess, and just had it as a blocker. It's not going to attack through a Korhaven very well. But that kind of taxes their already taxed mana and taxed available card pool to Liliana. So I think maybe a more optimal line of play was just reanimating Hogak over, getting back whatever I got back. Yeah, that's definitely possible. Thinking back on it now. But, yeah, anyway, that was this game one. I'm going to jump out, guys. We'll be right back for the second game against Akvar, and then, like I said, one more match after this one. All right, guys, back for game number 2 here against Akvar. This hand's, again, not exciting, but it's fine. I'm playing against, like, an attack deck, so, like, I have a blocker to trade off to turn on this Mausoleum Secrets. At this point, I was also running Recurring Nightmare, which I cut. Recurring Nightmare is just too slow. I just wasn't happy with it. They play out a Glorybound Initiate. I play out my Asylum Visitor 3-1 here. They just plow it. I think I like saving that plow. That's just me, though. They try to tap with the Rashadan Port. I just go ahead and Mausoleum Secrets for Entomb, I believe, because I have multiple reanimation effects, one of which is instant speed. So like if I can get a brand in my yard, I can probably win with that. And we also know they burn through their Swords to Plowshares, so unless they're sitting on Path to Exile plus Swords to Plowshares, I'll probably be able to get a good hit in. They go ahead and tap my land. I just Entomb for Gristlebrand right now, so I'm not wasting mana. I miss on lands here, which stinks, because, I would have probably had a brand. No, I would not have had a brand in play yet if I hit a land, because they're going to tap me down. They tap me again. I draw to a snow base, another snow basic. I go ahead and Gristlebrand here off of Exhume. They get their Dryad Militant down. And this is the game that I was actually talking about in the deck build portion. So they Palace Jailer me here. I do draw in response. Maybe I should have drawn on my turn to see if I could win. I just knew I didn't have a land drop that turn. I was going to be mana constrained. I think I just like blocking there. So they put me down to 2. I go ahead and sack. This is where I reanimate the Cabal Therapist with the hasty Corpse Dance to get back the Gristlebrand from underneath the Palace Jailer. I go ahead and, using Black Lotus, of course, I then proceed to use Reign of Filth to just play a bunch of nonsense blockers out. My Cabal Therapist gets exiled. They play out a Crusade. They play out this Devoted Crop Mate, which can get back anything that dies, any 2 power or less. Converted mana cost 2 or less back. I get Collective Brutality here. I'm just going to nug out this Dryad Militant, make sure they have nothing in their hand, which it's not likely they do have something in their hand. I actually did not have an attack here. If I'd attacked, I'm dead, I think, on the backswing, so I gain 7. Maybe I'm not. It's like basically if they have equipment, I die. Like if they have equipment or like a double striker, like a Silverblade Paladin, I just lose. So I did attack there. I figure like the game's going to get better for me the longer it goes. Plus, they're boxed into attacking here. They have to exert so they can gain some life back, so they don't just die to me cracking into them. They play out another little Shield of Knight of the Metal Grain. Get a card draw because we're trading the Monarchy back and forth. Fatal Push is a good draw here. I just go ahead and Fatal Push the card that hoses my Storm strategy and attack for a bazillion. They take 14. I could draw here. I don't remember if I do. I don't think I do. I just wait. Yeah, they don't have a lethal crackback unless they do draw like the Silverblade Paladin. And I know for a fact the actually I don't even think they do then because the Glory Bound Initiate is going to be tapped because they exerted it. They play out this thing to block, which is fine. I think I have a pretty easy Storm kill on this next turn though. Maybe not easy, but I think I do have a Storm kill. I just tap down the Carnophage. No point in taking damage here. Attack for 14. Expect a block, so my OP can draw. Just go ahead and sack the Carnophage. Find Yawgmoth's Will. Cast Songs of the Damned. Cast Yawgmoth's Will. Replay the Lotus. Replay the Songs of the Damned. Mausoleum Secrets for Cabal Ritual. Play Cabal Ritual. Diabolic Intent, getting rid of the Regisaur to find Tendrils to hit them for 20 life loss, or Storm count 9 here. So yeah, that was this match against White Weenie. It did really it hinged down to that one idiot 1-1 having menace. It really did. Like if I had not gotten my Gristle Brand back that turn, I'm pretty sure I'm just dead. But yeah, that's kind of like one of the interesting things that the deck can do, I guess. All right, guys, quick pause. I got one more game we'll showcase, then I'm gonna go ahead and call it. All right, guys, we're back. We're playing against I want to say like Leanne, but it's Lanai, like the Hawaiian word for porch. Yeah, so we have a turn 1 Liliana here, so I go for it. I don't know what I'm playing against. They have an Isochron Scepter, which is, if it's a good thing they have under, it's going to be good versus this deck because I can't remove it. SUI will play Revoker, but this deck does not run Revoker. It's just not. It's a good card, but it's not really on. It doesn't help the deck out enough in the other domains. So OP's out of lands. They're just leaving up this Boros Charm to nug my Liliana to death. Boros Charm 4 to my walkers. So we're getting cards out of their hand, but I need to draw into a threat so I can try to win the game. They Boros Charm the Liliana down to dead. I find a Buried Alive, which is fine. I end up finding the Hogak pile, I think. So I'm going to get back this Red Wanderer next turn. The Red Wanderer is a zombie, so it'll bring back the Gravecrawler, and then I can get the Hogak into play. Unfortunately, Dread Wanderer also comes to play tap, so I can't do that all at once. I also have an Entomb, which, I mean, I could be entombing for something here. If I draw something out, they draw like a reanimation effect. OP plays out a pump spell. I mean, you saw Feather in their deck, so like we know they're on some sort of pump spell deck. They're on like Jeskai Blitz, but they have Brute Force for the Slitherblade, and then give it Double Strike with Boros Charm off the Isochron Scepter, which is pretty savage. It's a lot of damage. So I'm down to 4 here, and if I don't draw a kill spell for this thing, I'm probably just dead. Actually, I'm dead anyways to the Isochron Scepter. So I had to find a way to win this turn. And I don't know if there is a way for this deck to win from this position. Yeah, there is actually. So the way to win here would have been to draw Collective Brutality. No, that wouldn't have worked either. No, it might have. So Collective Brutality, dome them for 2, gain 2, back up to 6. Hope the last card in their hand is not a pump spell or a burn spell. And then hit them for everything. I mean, if they have a land, they could attack with the Wandering Fumarole that way and kill me. But yeah, the best draw would have been Collective Brutality here. It often is not. It's kind of funny. Like I do find oftentimes that Collective Brutality does fix a lot of situations, and it would have fixed this one possibly. It just depends on their draw. But yeah, so we're dead. We're very, very dead here to the Boros Charm, Double Strike, Sure Strike, Brute Force. Their deck's very fast, very all in. And I think in general it may be a challenging matchup. I don't know. Like I haven't played enough against Blitz to know how easy or hard this matchup is. I think in general tempo is going to be harder for this deck, but I don't think tempo is impossible because of some of the Suicide Black components to the deck. But this is not really a tempo deck. It's more of an aggressive deck that has a sub-theme of running pump spells. And my removal count's a little lower in this build too, right? Because I have just so much going on that like I can't afford to run a ton of removal. So anyways, drop the first one here. Just kind of, hit a few goose eggs too many. OP, had Boros Charm and a bunch of pump spells, and we took it on the chin like a champ, and went on to game number 2 here following this. Alrighty, guys, we're back. Yeah, I'm not going to say no to this. Mostly because it has Black Lotus and Infernal Tutor. I just draw cards here. I could have saved that and see what my draw steps were. At this point, I just didn't get anything off of that Skull Clamp, so I go ahead and just use Stitch Together to get back my Despoiler of Souls so I can draw. OP's not really doing much, though. Like, they're kind of just hanging out. Like, they've cast some enablers and one threat. Like, one threat, one enabler. I attack. If they want to trade, it's cool with me. They don't, evidently. I equip it up post-combat, which is kind of embarrassing. I figured it would just trade off in combat. I kind of wanted to offer that trade to get information, I guess is what I'm saying. Part of the reason why is they have an answer to it. They have a Braid, so they answer the Clamp here. And at this point, they're not doing anything with their mana, so I feel like there's a possibility like they are running counter magic as well. So I don't want to just jam my I could try to win this turn, I guess is what I'm saying. So they tap their blue mana, and I'm like, alright, I can probably win now. They put, a Path to Exile, which is fine, does nothing. Draw a Lotleth Troll, that's going to get sacked to Culling the Weak more than likely. They have a shock. Cool. My thing dies. Get them on a 9 here. Go ahead and Culling the Weak, one of my things. Make a bunch of mana. Infernal Tutor for Yawgmoth's Will. Cast Yawgmoth's Will. And go ham. Recast the Lotus. Recast the Blood Pet. Make mana with Blood Pet. Make mana with Culling the Weak. Recast Infernal Tutor. Find Tendrils. And Tendrils them for 22 life loss. From a life total of 9. So, managed to get them here. I don't know if they're on Counter Magic or not. Probably not. It's probably not likely they're on Counter Magic. But, I didn't see a need to go for it on turn 5. Even though I could have. I mean, if they have blue-white up and they're just not doing anything, it feels pretty silly to me to, just die to, whatever. Negate. That would just kind of stink to lose to a negate. So, I'm why? They had to answer the board at that point in time. I had board advantage. And, when they go to answer the board or try to impact the board in some way, then, I can go for lethal, which I think was the prudent play. But yeah, we had a turn 5 win here if we had wanted it, I think. But yeah, anyways, just depends. They have the gate, they have Dovin's veto, then probably not. We'd probably just lose. But yeah, end up getting them here on turn 6 and on to game number 3 against Lini. Alright, last game against Lini here. So, this hand's got enough going right in it that I keep it because I kind of want to test it. It needs to make a draw step, though. And that wasn't actually a bad draw step because it's going to help fuel my bin. But it's got 2 reanimation effects, a lot of fast mana, so if I draw a big dum-dum, I can reanimate it. If I draw little beaters, I can attack and block them. And, if I hopelessly miss, then that's going to stink because it doesn't really have, it doesn't do that much on its own. So I'm drawing reanimation effects, which is kind of the part of my deck I don't want to be drawing right now. OP has Path to Exile, but they're missing on land drops. So my thinking is they have Path to Exile as the Swords of Plowshares. I think that's what they're on. I think they very specifically have those 2 cards because I don't know why else they would have kept that hand. So I kind of know in my head at this point, I have to find Gristlebrand if I want to reanimate with this hand. Because the card draw needs to be relevant off of it. They go ahead and brainstorm here, likely looking for a land. Find a Plains. I'm still just digging here. I just need to find a good target or a card I can hard cast. And I find it. Diabolic Intent allows me to do it. I go up to 7 cards. Go ahead and Diabolic Intent for Gristlebrand. Use the Bazaar to discard my hand, with the exception of the Necromancy. Get the Gristlebrand back with Necromancy. I'm at 19 life, so I can draw up to 14 cards here. Go ahead and look at their hand. I was going to name Force of Will. They have the Swords of Plowshares. I draw down to 5. My hand's very lethal. Very, very lethal hand in a lot of ways. So, as you can see, I'm just storming off pretty hard here. And yeah, that is that. I guess I'm just casting stuff for fun. I think I cast a Hogak here. It's basically a free spell. It's a 1-mana Entomb target. I Tendrils them for a bazillion. So anyways, guys, that is SUI Storms, a.k.a. Shitstorm. The deck, honestly, I think is not only viable, it's a viable deck, but I think it's actually more competitive than I first thought it would be. I've certainly lost some games. I'm not showcasing all the games I've lost because there's some games that you'll just play where you don't play a game. I think I had one where I got strip mined out. The early games, the early ones that I was losing was just because the deck build was really raw. I don't think it had gone enough in the right direction. But I think these matchups tend to be pretty indicative of what the deck is up to, kind of how it runs, how it's I think piloted effectively, and you kind of get to see it do its thing a couple of times too. But that said, this build, again, was inspired off of a couple of folks asking me about it to find out that they were inspired by Jer White talking about an aggro combo build. And I think it's pretty cool. It's not something I've seen in the format, not seen done, and I'm glad I had the opportunity to kind of go through and brew this deck up. That said, I think there's still a lot of room for improvement in the build. I think if it's one you want to pick up and make improvements on, by all means, pick it up and make improvements on it. The deck is a lot of fun to play. And honestly, I think it has decent range on it, too. I feel like now, with SUI Black, you're a 70-30 deck. There's some decks that just can't beat you, and then there's a ton of decks you just can't beat. I feel like this deck actually has a larger volume of matchup neutrality just based on the cobweb of different strategies that somehow work together. Seemingly should not, but somehow work together. to kind of give you, the pilot, more flexibility in your mulligan decisions to get after the strategy that you best need for the matchup. So, like, I guess what I mean by that is, like, against red deck wins, like, SUI's just going to lose. Like, SUI Black just loses to red deck wins, loses to white weenie. Like, you don't win those matchups. Like, you just lose them. Like, you might as well, if you see, like, a turn 1 Jackal Pup, you might as well just, like, concede. Like, it's not that bad, but it's bad. Like, it's a really bad matchup. Whereas, like, this build, you see that, you're probably going to lose game 1. Maybe you don't. But, game 2, you just combo them out because you're on the play. Game 3, reanimated Gristlebrand, turn 2, turn 3. And those are obviously good draws, but I mean, turn 3, turn 4, Gristlebrand's not bad against red deck wins either. It's very hard to beat through that card. And you're basically putting them to, like, having a draw of, like, Skullcrack, Rampaging Ferocidon, and or, like, Sulfuric Vortex to kind of beat, an onboard Gristlebrand. I suppose the Minotaur card that makes things not block could do it too, if all he needed was one lethal swing. But yeah, I mean, like, you have that option against, like, red deck wins where, like, you can actually win that matchup now. You saw us beat White Weenie, which, typically speaking, like, it's about as bad, maybe just as bad, maybe worse, I don't know. For SUI Black, traditionally, try to beat that deck, it's not good. And we managed to get him. Then against, like, mid-range, like, you're not going to have the density of threats, but against mid-range, like, what tends to be good versus mid-range? Well, Tendrils of Agony is really good against mid-range. Like, mid-range is not because mid-range is generally a card quality and not synergy-based strategy. They're going to draw the wrong parts of their deck. They're going to draw, like, their Gideon Ally of Zendikars. They're going to draw their, like, Liliana the Last Hopes. And those cards are fine, but, like, they don't do much against a card that's not really playing, or a deck that does not have to play to the board. Like, yes, we have all these little idiot creatures, but, like, honestly, like, they're designed to be cards that you can replay with very low overhead cost and on low in-hand resources, but high enough mana resources. And we've built in a way that we can have equity in using our creatures, whether they be in the bin, i.e. Songs of the Damned, or Mausoleum Secrets, and or the board to make mana, i.e. And or tutor, like Diabolic Intent, Culling the Weak, to get after a combo that, like, is not interactive with mid-range. Like, they have a very difficult time interacting with, which is just Tendrils. Then against control, just play SUI Black. Just play little idiots that attack for 2 and 3 and come back from the graveyard after they Wrath of God them or burn them out. And just keep hitting them until they have to play to the board. And then, if you need to, you can Tendrils them out. If not, you just keep on hitting them until they fall over. So yeah, it's kind of the deck, and, like, I think it actually does. Like, I started building this deck just because I was curious, right? And it was a cool enough concept and something that novel enough that I was like, I kind of want to build this. And I think it's kind of grown on me a bit to a point where I think that it actually has good reason strategically to play it. And yeah, it's a hell of a lot more powerful than SUI Black is, but it still gets to play those cards too, which is near and dear to my heart. But yeah, very, very cool deck, kind of interesting strategy, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. This is, again, more of a tier 2 deck. Don't get me wrong. I do think it could win events, though. I think this deck is good enough that, like, and it's weird enough that folks are not going to really always know how to play against it, and they're not going to know what you're up to, per se, because the deck can just kind of play along multiple different axes. That, like, I do think it can win events. So I think it's a best deck. No. But I think it's probably solidly tier 2. I think you could win events with it because I do think it's very powerful and has powerful lines of play available to it. And again, more matchup neutrality, I think, across the range of different decks you'll face in the format. Anyways, guys, hope you enjoyed. This is a Sui Storm or Shitstorm. Yeah, guys, take care now and enjoy. Happy holidays.